turned on the recording.
You did? Okay. I don't know. I didn't give me that option. All right. Okay, good. Thank you, Alex.
Yep.
Okay.
Shall we begin?
Yeah, I can't hear Catherine.
Catherine, yeah, you have
It would help if I unmuted. I talked to you all and said, good morning. Anyways, sorry about the technical issues we were just struggling with for a moment. Not the first time in history people have had technical problems, but I think we have managed to overcome them. And I want to just say good morning to everyone and thank you for joining us today for Essentials with the Masters. Hi, Xavier. With Action and Dr. Alan Graham. So Deirdre is going to give you a few words of etiquette for this and how it's going to proceed. And then I will introduce Alan.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. If you have questions, please put your questions in the chat. And since we are on Google Meets, you will find the chat in the lower right-hand corner. There are little icons, a circle, two little people, and the third one looks like a little speech box. That is the chat. And towards the end, we will allow some time to begin that. And Catherine, we need an opening word, which you're good with that.
Our opening word is doctor, because Alan is a doctor. He's a PhD.
I am.
Surprise! And if y'all just want to say hi and tell us where you're from, that would be great in the chat. Love to see where you're all from, because I think we're from all over the world. Who do we send that again to? Okay, so just about the opening and closing word. The opening and closing word, you're going to send to info@packcoaches.org. PAACCOACHES.org. Info. All right, and we'd appreciate it if you could send it within about 24 hours, because then we can get those, we can get on top of those certificates that we send out to you, and that would be great. And of course, these are good for a CEU towards your renewal this year.
And what was the opening word?
Doctor.
Doctor. Okay. Thank you.
Great. Do you have anything else to say, Deirdre?
I do not. I think we should get going.
Okay, great. Then I would like to, and I have the pleasure of introducing Alan Graham, who has been such a good friend to PAC over the years. He's been on our board. He has done many of our credentialing sessions. We're so appreciative of his contributions. I could spend the whole hour reading Alan's CV, but let me just read a couple of things. As a coach, therapist, educator, author, and lecturer, Alan R. Graham, PhD, has over 3 decades of experience helping thousands of children, adolescents, adults, and families, many with ADHD, navigate life's challenges and gain the tools they need to effectively manage their lives. He got his PhD from Northwestern. He has been on the professional staff of at Advocate Lutheran General Hospital. He's worked with Martin Seligman's Authentic Happiness Coaching Program. He is, wait a sec, I'm looking for the part. He received his coach training at Mentor Coach, and he is currently the dean of the ADHD coach training program for Mentor Coach. He is both a PCC and an MCAC with us at PAC. And without further ado, I would like to introduce Dr. Alan Graham.
Hello. Okay, so I do not have control over the slides, so Alex Hay is taking care of that, so I'll be asking him to go to the next one, and that's what we'll do. So Today we're going to talk about action. So those are my contact information if you would like to contact me. Why don't we go to the next slide? So one of the people that I work with at Mentor Coach is Liz Brown, and Liz has done one of the presentations on the PAC Essentials. And so I stole a couple of her slides, and this is one of them, which kind of sets the tone of the coaching mindset. And it's the notion that, we view our clients as creative, resourceful, and whole, that we believe in their abilities, we trust in their wisdom, we provide unconditional positive regard, and they don't need us to fix them, and we don't need them, and we don't see them as broken. So our goal is to be present with our client and help them work through the issues that they're going through. So we partner with them. So that's where we go. So let's go to the next slide. So there are the 5 PAC Essentials. You've all heard about the ADHD lens, about safety, collaboration, and wonder. Today, we're going to talk about action. Even though there are 5 different essentials, things kind of merge into each other. And as I was putting together this presentation, this other stuff kind of shows up all the time. So we're just going to have to deal with that. So let's go to the next one. Next slide. Action. I found this on Google. I thought it was cute. Next. So for what PAC? In the PAC Essentials, it says it's with the recognition of executive function challenges prevalent in the ADHD brain. The coach supports the client in the process of planning and taking action that results in learning, accomplishment, and empowerment. That's what action is all about. I like that description, so that's kind of where we'll start from. And let's go to the next line. So how do we do that? I guess that's what this is going to be about, right? How do we do that? Next slide. So what's important to understand is that there is no one size fits all. Now, I don't know how many of you have had coaching clients who, when they come in, they say they want you to tell them what they need to do. What are the skills what are the tips you have? What are the skills you have? What do you have the things to do? Show me how to do it. It doesn't work that way, because what works for one person with ADHD doesn't work for someone else with ADHD. So we really have to customize this. So it really is no one size fits all. Next. So how do we start? We have a client in the room, and we're going to coach for action. How do we start? So this is the audience participation part of the presentation. So put in the chat how you would start. So go ahead. How would you start? What would be the first things that you would do when, strengths. Ask them what they want to lead or focus on. Work on establishing an agreement. Of course, we have to work on establishing the agreement, etc. We got to do all that. What is success this week? Connect with them. What are your focus and goals? All these are really good. Let's say, so in general, the place where we will start, these are all good. Let's go to the next slide. We have to establish alignment. So by doing that, we need to understand what their strengths are. We need to understand what their values are. We need to understand what their passion is. So we're going to start asking questions about who they are. We need to connect with them, find out what's important to them, get to know them. So these are the things that we need to do first. And when we work from strengths and values, and we hear what their passion is, we are better able to craft actions that are actually going to work for our client. So how do we do that? Well, there are lots of ways to do it. The way I like to do it, and you can go to the next slide, is I like to use the mind scan, which is called the Hartman, it's the Hartman value profile, which is a number of you who are on this call have taken it and have had the experience of it. I think it's really great that Robert Hartman, he also got his PhD from Northwestern, so that was cool. He was nominated for a Nobel Prize in 1973. He created a thing called formal axiology, which is based on a mathematical model to measure how people think and value. And so the mind scan itself identifies an individual's strengths and their uniqueness. I find it's a useful tool to get a start with a client of what's important to them, what do they value, so we can work from there. Next slide. So this is what the profile looks like. So Hartman, in his mathematical model, now this value profile doesn't compare you to a normative sample. It is based on Hartman's mathematical model of what is valuable. So he divides it into the external world and the internal world, how we interact with the world, and then how we interact with ourselves. And within that, there are 3 dimensions. There's the intrinsic dimension, how we work with people, the extrinsic dimension, what we do, and then the systematic dimension of how we think. And it measures what we pay most attention to and what we tend to disregard, which is our bias. So we're biased. Our bias is what we pay attention to. And then the clarity of the value. So how clear are we on the particular value? So there's 6 in these 6 areas. There's empathy for others, self-empathy. There is practical thinking. There's role awareness of who am I and what am I doing in the world. Structural thinking is how we understand the rules of society, and then our own sense of self-direction. It's a really cool tool. If any of you are interested, you can send me an email and I can have you do it, and I will debrief it for you for nothing, just because I like doing it. So we could do that. That's an offer to any of you. Just, email me and let me know. Okay, next. So we create alignment. We start to know who our client is. We get a sense of what's important to them, what they focus on. So we want to consider all these things when we're thinking about taking action, planning, goal setting, doing experiments, requesting challenges. All this is on the form for the PAC Essentials, body doubling, prioritizing, etc., sustaining it. These are all the things that the coach is considering when we're thinking about action. So it's not a simple one step. Next slide. So, and some of you brought these up. These are the 4 questions to start the session. So what do you want to focus on today? What would you like to walk away from at the end of this session? Why is it important to you? This really gives a sense of how important that's going to be. And then what do we need to address in order to accomplish this today? This is a good starting point at the beginning of the session to really focus on what we want to accomplish. Now, that this may not lead to an action session, but it may. Next. So the components of coaching for action, this also comes from the list on the PAC Essentials, and we're going to go through each one of them. Can you put it on the full screen? Because then otherwise I can't read it. Oh, there you go. So establishing priorities, reducing the tasks to reduce overwhelm, deal with motivation, dealing with systems and structures, accountability, memory prompts, inviting what new awareness they have, acknowledging what they've done and what the next steps are, encourage them to do more, and also how medication interacts. Next. Okay, so establishing priorities. So the question that I ask is, what is your biggest challenge? Now, my experience here is that sometimes we have a client who can tell you exactly what their biggest challenge is, and that's something we start to work from. But many people with ADHD are overwhelmed with lots of stuff, and they have a hard time figuring out what their biggest challenge is. So we may need to take some time to explore that. So we may ask questions like, what's the most important thing that you need to accomplish? What makes it important? Let's go to the next slide. I like to use the Covey matrix, which is the urgent on the top and important on the side. So we have the first quadrant. This is the one that people with ADHD act on all the time because it's urgent and important. This is something, if there was a crisis, you want somebody with ADHD there because they're going to jump and do. So those things are quick. Those things are acted on. We don't really need to coach on that because that happens. The other issue that we may have, so when we go down to urgent and not important, these are things that we often have to work with our clients on to help them to manage interruptions, emails, calls, other stuff that is calling out to them, but may not be as important. So we might want to help them kind of figure out how to pause and stop before they act. Then we have another area that's a problem, which is the non-urgent and important. So these are things that are longer term planning, like doing your taxes, like doing self-care, long-term planning, etc. So these are things that we want to build some structures around to help get those done. And then we have the time wasters, the not important, the not urgent, which is, that's the shiny object that could get us distracted, someone with ADHD distracted, and we have to focus on those. So, but using these and kind of sorting out what issues our clients are dealing with and seeing which quadrant they are can help our client to make a determination of what do they need to prioritize. Often they say everything's important. Let's go to the next. So when we get started, setting up tasks and steps is a challenge. So what are the steps that you need to get to the goal, and what is the first step? I love this baby steps. We need to break down the challenge into small steps. The best example I have is getting your homework done for an adolescent or a child. So you could say, do your homework. Well, that's not going to get it done because we got to break it down into its component parts. So when you think about it, homework has at least 4 parts to it. Part 1 is writing down the assignment or getting the assignment. It could be on Google Classroom or wherever it is. So that's the first one. The second task in homework is to collect all the materials you need to do your homework: paper, pencils, books, files, online files, whatever, getting stuff you need. The third one is doing the homework. That's often when we think of do your homework, that's what needs to be done. But then there's a fourth one, and this is where people with ADHD often fall down. It's turning it in. often it doesn't get turned in. And as far as the teacher is concerned, you haven't done it. So when the teacher says, Alex, where's your homework? I did it. Well, you didn't turn it in. And if it's online, you didn't press the send button, or you didn't turn it. If it's a hard copy, you didn't hand it to the teacher the next day. So all of these aspects are part of the steps that go into doing homework. And so helping them to break it down into the boxes so that they know what steps they need to take to get there. Next. Now, what's their motivation for the plan? Now, I like to use the 1 to 10 scale. So we talk about a plan, we talk about what they're going to do, and then I say, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to do this? Now, if we have a good coaching relationship, they're going to be able to tell us what, where their number is. Yeah, it's a 6. Okay. So what does that mean? So I want to do it, but I'm thinking that if I don't do it right away, I'm not going to get it done. So I said, oh, okay. So what would it be at a 7? What would happen if you were able to move it to 7? How would that change your motivation? How we can raise the likelihood? Can we set up in your environment to help you get this done? Next. So develop customized structures, systems, employing strengths in the assistive technology. So what do you need to develop the system or structure? Let's break it down. Let's figure out, what do you need? And what strengths can you use to help create this system? So one of the things I love about strengths is that we can use our strengths to tackle things that are hard for us. I'll give you an example. So one of my top strengths, and I like to use the VIA Signature Strength Survey, although there are others. My top strength is humor and playfulness. I like to have a good time. If you couldn't tell, I have all my toys, and my stuffed animals. So back in the day, I have a clinical practice as well as my coaching practice. And back in the early 90s, managed care was taking hold, which probably led to the whole ADHD coaching movement anyway, but that's another story. And what the insurance companies were requiring therapists to get authorization for a limited number of sessions, and then you have to call back to get more sessions, etc. And invariably, me being a PhD psychologist and others who are licensed social workers had to talk to bachelor's level nurses, and people got really angry about it. However, getting angry about it wasn't going to help you get your sessions. So I figured I would use my strength of humor and playfulness and have fun with these people. So I go in there, I ask them how they're doing, what's going on, etc. I become their best friend, have a good time, and I always got authorization for sessions. So I had this miserable thing I had to do, but I applied one of my strengths to it, and it made it work. So those are some of the things that we can explore with our clients to help them to come up with ways to make what is not fun or things that they may not remember to do, how to get them more engaged in. And then there's the notion of experimentation. Let's experiment with it. Try it out. See what happens. If it works, great. If it doesn't, let's bring it back and we'll figure out how to tweak it to make it work. It takes time to build, and it's going to take time for it to lock in. So let's keep looking at that. Next. So we want to talk about accountability. So what do you need to help you be accountable? Who in their environment can support them? What do they need to be accountable? And how will that happen? Often, I don't know what your experience is, but often when I'm coaching somebody and we're meeting on a weekly basis, they often get the thing done the day before or the day of the coaching session because they know that they're going to be talking to me and they want to be able to tell me that they did it. So that becomes an accountability. Sometimes I've had clients where they send me an email every morning telling me what they've done the day before and what their plan is for the day. And that works. There are people that will do accountability sessions along the way with their coach, but if there's someone in the environment that they can connect to make sure that it gets done. So all these are ways, but it's important that we talk to our clients about accountability, because one of the things we also know about people with ADHD is out of sight, out of mind. And they may say they're going to do it, and then they get caught up in something else and it goes by the wayside. So having an accountability can increase the likelihood that they do it. Next. Talk about memory prompts. So I saw this and said, what is a memory prompt? So I Googled it. And it said a memory prompt is a clue or trigger that helps someone remember information stored in their memory. So the question we can ask them is, how can you remember that? What do you need? What do you need to remember that? You know, in the old days, you put a string around your finger. But what kinds of things do you need? Do you need a Post-it note? Do you need to put something on your bathroom mirror? Do you use notifications and reminders on your phone? You have to be careful of that because, you know, if you have too many of those reminders, you know, you ignore them all. But finding a memory prompt that can jog the memory, because remember, people with ADHD is now and not now. Next. So we want to help our clients to understand that they're learning, they're developing new awareness, they're coming up with new ideas. So what did you learn new about yourself today, and what did you learn new about your situation today? So how has this helped you to move forward on the goals that you're working towards? Next slide. And then we want to celebrate and acknowledge progress. You know, look how far you've come. You got a plan. And then the question is, so how are we going to keep this going? And that could be a full discussion in itself. One of the things we know is that when we start something and it works for a week or two or three, and then it stops working, what can we do to keep it going? How do we keep it novel and interesting? Because novelty and interest is something that can help someone with ADHD move forward. So we want to continue to work with our clients to help keep it top of mind so that they can get that job done. Next. How does medication play a part in getting action done? So if our client is taking medication, we talk about how do you manage the medication to make sure you get things done. We may have discussions about when that works best. I have a college student who now is taking a class from 6:30 to 8 at night, and her Adderall XR starts to wear off around 5 o'clock. So we had a discussion. She went to her physician, who then gave her a booster that she's now going to be able to use for later in the day so she can get the job done. Medication is a tool. It's a tool to help your client do what they need to do. So recognizing that and seeing it as a tool that can help the client to be more active and get what they need to get done. So I wasn't sure how long this was going to take, but I think we got to the last one, the last slide. So why don't we open it up for questions? Are there any?
Great. Thank you so much, Alan. So if you guys want to start putting your questions in the chat, that would be great. Alan, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. Wow, I really enjoyed that. And I think I wrote notes and picked up a lot of language that that was particularly direct and that I can see using in my own practice. So thank you very much. You know, do you ever find that you get to the action step sort of partway through the session and that leads you to even another agreement or something of that nature? And how do you handle that?
So, yeah, sometimes things change. And in the middle, if someone, again, people with ADHD, thoughts are coming in all the time, right? So what we may ask in the middle of a session says, okay, we had an agenda to tackle X. Now you're bringing up Y. Where do we want to go? And help to balance that out to see, okay, well, maybe let's go back to X or let's stick with Y for now.
Alan, I have a couple of questions here for you. One question is about when I was being trained, they discouraged coaches from talking about medications. Has that philosophy changed? And then I have another couple of questions for you.
We're not physicians. And so as physicians, we can't provide medical advice and we can't provide advice on medication. However, if our client is taking medication and it's a part of what they do and it's a part of how they manage their world, we can discuss it with them. I don't see where that should be a problem. We're not telling them what to do. We're helping them to clarify how they want their medication to work for them. And if they have questions about what they need to do about their medication, then you direct them back to the physician. Say, talk to your physician about that.
Would it be appropriate to say something like, you've shared with me the medication you're taking and there might be other options? Could you go as far as saying something like that and then directing them back to their prescriber?
You say, if they're having some concerns that the medication is not working for them, yeah, I think it's appropriate to say, I understand that there are other medications. Have you considered discussing that with your physician?
Okay, I have another question. I would love to hear how others coach clients who come back week after week without following through on actions.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that happens a lot. And I think that what we need to do at that point is take smaller steps and find anything small that the client can do to feel some level of success. We may be biting off too big of a chunk.
I think that, oh, sorry, Alan, go ahead.
And explore with them, what their motivation is and what do they really want to get done? How important is it? How does that fit into what their values are?
I think that pertains to the next question that somebody was asking. When the coach is, encouraging them, and asking them, what could you do? The client draws a blank and they can't think of anything. And they're sort of saying, but I came to you, for you to tell me what to do, essentially. Not, those are my words, but that was essentially the gist of it. And I think the same answer applies. Smaller steps.
Yeah, my answer to them is always, there's no one size that fits all. One person's ADD is different than another person's ADD. And the way that we understand what's going to work is we have to experiment. We have to try things out, see what works, see what is going to have an impact. And let's explore some of that. Those are some of the questions that I'll talk to a client about.
I have another question here asking about, are there boosters impacting sleep? I hear this
Well,
from some parents, but
yeah, that's an issue.
needs them for more. Yeah.
That has to be dealt with the prescribing physician, because sometimes that happens. These medications can keep you up.
Please add some more questions in the chat if you have them. I know one
Questions
thing
that Julio asked. Oh, sorry. One of the questions that Julio asked is, in terms of medication, what can and can't we talk about? Where do you find the dividing line, Alan, ethically for that situation?
We can't tell them how to manage, how to use their medication. That's not our job. We can ask them, how has the physician talked to you about that? And if the client says, they told me to do it this way, but it's not working for me, I might ask, how do you think it might work better? And see what they say. And then I would say to them, have a conversation with your treating physician and discuss that with them. So I'm not going to tell them what to do because I can't. I'm not a physician. But I can help them think through how they want to talk to their doctor. And I think that's where the line is. You can't tell them what to do.
Have you ever coached a client in how they can talk to their doctor? Like sometimes exploring what, as you said, what are they hoping to achieve? What are they not achieving? And how can they approach that conversation with their prescribing physician?
Definitely. And we've done role plays. We've done role plays, where I pretend to be a doctor and they ask me questions. Because that can help them. I often suggest in this discussion, it might be helpful to list a few bullet points that you want to cover with your physician. The reality is most physicians will give you, I think that the latest research showed that the average physician appointment is 8 minutes long. So the more you can help your client to have their bullet points ready to ask questions that they need, the better off they're going to be able to get that done. And role playing is one way to do it. Another way is just to come up with, so what do you want to ask the doctor?
Yeah.
I have another inquiry here about what wording do we need? I think they're saying to be sensitive in order to avoid demand avoidance. So I think what they're asking is they suspect their client has demand avoidance, and how can the coach use phrasing that could, elicit action instead of avoidance.
Well, I guess, the question would be is what's getting in the way? A lot of times our clients feel an obligation to do something because an external entity, be it a parent or a spouse or someone, is wanting them to do something. And then maybe having a conversation with them as to what's holding you back on this. And, I see one of the notes here that say, that low self-esteem, fear of failure often impacts motivation. So we may need to explore that. What are the things that are holding you back? And how important is this to you? And what are the implications of if you do it or you don't do it? There's a thing called mental contrasting, which is often helpful in building motivation. So you say, okay, this is something that you say you want to do. Let's think about it. What will happen if 3 weeks from now you've done it? What will be going on? And let them say that. And then say, okay, now let's think about 3 weeks from now and you haven't done it. What will that be like? And let them think about and understand the difference between those two. That may help build some motivation, because they may find that, yeah, if I do this, then this, and this will happen. If I don't do this, then this will happen. And I don't want that to happen. And that become more important to them. That's mental contrast, and it's a very helpful tool. And another thing that is helpful is to create if-then statements. So if they want to say, let's say they want to avoid getting a donut on their way to work every day because they want to lose weight. So they walk to work, and the path to work, they go by a Dunkin' Donuts. So the question might be, so what will you do when you're walking by the Dunkin' Donuts to avoid going in and buying a donut? And come up with a plan. I've had clients who might say, well, I'll walk another way so I don't go buy a Dunkin' Donuts. Or another one will say, I'm going to say to myself, I'm not doing it. Whatever that's going to be. But creating an if-then statement. If this happens, then I will do that. The more that your client can come up with scenarios where they have a plan of what they'll do if something happens, the greater the likelihood that they'll follow through. It doesn't always work, and you don't always cover all the contingencies, but that's one way that can help.
We have another question here about how can you check to see if the client is really ready to put the work in during a discovery call? Coaching requires doing the work.
All you can do is take what the client gives you, and that's when you can ask the questions. You could say, so how important are these goals to you? And what will happen if you reach these goals? What will happen if you don't? I think those are questions in a discovery call to get some sense of what your client's motivation is. One of the questions I ask when in a discovery call is, why now? Why are you coming to coaching now? Because that often gives us some insight. My wife told me that I need this. I'm in danger of losing my job, so I got to do something. Or someone say, I know I have ADHD. I understand that coaching is what you're supposed to do, so I'm here. Again, those are external motivations that are not necessarily going to make a difference. So again, the question is, what makes this important to you? and help them to develop that intrinsic motivation. Other questions?
Catherine, you're muted.
Oh, I
Could
see
tell
one.
that my lips were moving. Naima has a question. Have you seen any solutions if the booster does impact sleep? Like what if their booster dose is impacting their sleep, have you found any workarounds or how do you attack that problem?
Well, if their booster is affecting their sleep and they haven't talked to their doctor yet, I will suggest to them that they need to do that. That can create some issues that, you know, if you don't have medication on board, how are you going to manage these things? What kinds of extra things do we need to do to help you to get stuff done?
Right. It's related to, we have a lot of questions related to medication today, which is very interesting.
Yeah.
Do you have any solutions for helping clients track symptoms so they can find patterns on reporting back to their doctors? Because that's often a case, like people, you know, the doctor gives you the great question, is it working? And you go,
Right.
what am I looking for?
Yeah. So if that's what the client wants to do, we can sit and we can come up with markers, and let's talk about what are the things that you want to see better from the medication, and let's come up with a list. And then, you know, if we're meeting on a weekly basis, let's discuss has that been? How has that been? I mean, you see a physician maybe once a month, maybe once every 3 months. So if we have that and we just track those on a weekly basis, then you have something that you can report back to the doctor about. But again, that has to come from the client if they are seeing that as an issue for them.
Right. Good.
We have another conversation point here. This person says, I'd love to hear any nuance about one, the balance between having the client understand their ADHD and having compassion with themselves for the way their ADHD presents, to stop judging themselves so much and yet having them aspire to make genuine change and hold themselves accountable for it. And B, not making the ADHD the only thing, really embracing the entire person as well as the ADHD.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I mean, ADHD is a part of who the client is. It's not all of who they are. And I think the important thing that we want to do, that's why I love looking at the values and the strengths, is what are the strengths of the individual we're talking about? And again, I think that's also part of the coaching mindset. You know, we believe in the people that we work with. We believe that they are creative, resourceful, and whole. We believe that they have an understanding of the world and can work into that. And I think that attitude is empowering to a client because they know that there's someone there that believes in them. You know, all the studies on resilience in people have shown that the primary factor that builds an individual's resilience is the knowledge that there's someone in the world there that believes in them. And I think coaching does that. You know, I like to use humor when, you know, we have a client that judges them too much. I'll say things like, oh, so the war in the Middle East, is that your fault too? You know, or something like that, to kind of help them to kind of get some clarification, some perspective on what they can and what they can't do. You know, the serenity prayer the alcoholics use is you know, the awareness of what you can change and what you can't, and the wisdom to know the difference, again, is another piece to help with our clients. That, there's some things they just are, and there's not much you can do about them, but there are things that you can change. And so let's focus on what you can change, not what you can't. Another one that I use is, particularly when people come in and they want other people to change. And I say, you can lead the horse to water, but you can't make him drink. That's the way it is, and helping to understand where you as a person begins and the rest of the world starts. What you really do have ability to change and what you don't.
I have a couple of people here talking about discussing trauma, and that a lot of their clients have massive trauma because of their experiences in the world. And are there resources for coaches regarding PTSD and CPTSD? How do you approach it when trauma rears its head in a session?
So if there is trauma and a person can work around it, we can acknowledge that it's there, but they can work around it. I think that we can do that in coaching. If the client really needs to work through that trauma, they need a therapist, because we're not, as coaches, we're not trained to do trauma work. That's not what we do. So I would suggest that they get a therapist.
Good advice.
But if they can kind of compartmentalize that trauma to move forward on the things that they're trying to do, then we can deal with that.
Gotcha. There's also a question from Ursula regarding autism and ADHD, AUDHD. Are there tools or tips to develop action items in a way that accommodates their ADHD or ASC, as sometimes they don't know which will take the lead and they struggle to make the intended progress?
So when we're coaching, whether they are on the spectrum, the autism spectrum, or they have ADHD, or they have both, I don't think it matters when we're talking about action. I think that we need to understand who the individual is and what their obstacles are and what their strengths are to help them move forward on the things that they want to move forward on. I do think, one of the important things with being an ADHD coach is we need to understand and appreciate ADHD. I think the same thing goes for autism spectrum. We need to understand and appreciate what the autism spectrum is. And if we don't know that, then we need to learn about it, because that is going to impact on what our clients are doing if they are on the spectrum as well. And so that can help us ask the questions to our clients to help them craft the action plans that they need based on who they are. But we can, if we're not aware of what the autism symptoms are or how they impact on people, then, our questions are going to miss the mark.
Got you. We have one more.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we have one more question. A concern here about a client who was very engaged, but the breakdown occurred because the feedback from the environment was not sufficient. How to work on self-esteem to support progress and motivation to take even baby steps.
I think we continue to be encouraging, continue to celebrate our clients, and find small wins. And one of the questions that I often use at the beginning of each session, so what went well this past week? And helping them to identify those things. And then the question is, well, how come they went well? Because ultimately, by identifying the things that go well, ultimately the client is going to start to see that they had something to do for that there was something that they did that helped something go well, and help to celebrate any ones we can. Ooh, good breathing. You're breathing well today. I mean, if you gotta get as basic as that, but I think that's that positive, unconditional positive regard that we give to our clients, and that we look for the things that have gone well. So we really need to focus on that.
Alan, this has been fantastic, I think, and I really appreciate all the questions that people have asked, and it's taken us in some directions that you are very wise about, and I appreciate that. So thank you so much for your presentation today. We're coming to the end of our time. I want to start by saying what our closing word is. Our closing word is accomplishment. When you take an action, you experience accomplishment. ACCOMPLISHMENT, accomplishment. So thank you very much. This was the fifth and final of our Essentials with the Masters. So I just want to take a moment to thank all of our masters, which was David Guerk on the ADHD lens, Barbara Luther on safety, Liz Brown on collaboration, Jay Perry on wonder, and of course the amazing Dr. Alan Graham on action. Thank you very much. Again, round of applause. If you can email me or email to info@paccoaches.org your opening and closing words, I'd be happy to send you your certificate. We will be having other presentations in the future. I know we're going to be having a presentation on AI probably in January. We're at a very busy time of year right now. And I thank you very much for your participation, all of you who've joined us for this time. Is there anything you would like to add, Deirdre?
No, I just want to thank everybody for coming. I talked to Alan about his presentation, and I know he's very timely, so we will be ending right on time. And I would say actually that we will be working on making all the essentials with the masters available, and we will be setting it up with an opportunity to take a quiz to gain CEs in the future.
All
If
right.
If you weren't able to attend live.
Right,
Yeah.
if you weren't able to attend live. You can share that information with your friends.
And this presentation right now on the homepage of paccoaches.org is the Wonder presentation. And this presentation will be put up on the landing page in a couple of weeks' time. So you'll have a good amount of time to rewatch this. I know it's my intention to rewatch it. There was a lot to learn in this. That was fantastic, Alan. Thank you so very much.
All right.
So,
Okay.
Alan, do you have any closing words you'd like to give us?
Nope.
Nope.
Thanks. All
Good.
right.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you all so very much. Have a wonderful weekend, and we shall see you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.